So, when I was in year 6, it was at the end of the day when this happened. I first go into the cloakroom to get my things to leave and go home. I then went out of the cloakroom, and my blue coat had, at the time, just vanished instantly. Then I go and get the caretaker to ask him if he had seen my blue coat. He said no. So then my mother comes in looking for me. Then a few minutes go by, and my blue coat comes flying in like it was chucked by someone who ran by the door very fast, and it landed on the floor. It was like something invisible just ran with it, and then quickly chucked it back. This is still the most strange and weird thing that's happened to me at primary school. I work overnights at a nursing home, and I was thinking of something. Do y'all have any idea about this or had similar experiences? So this is what happened. About 2 years ago, a couple moved into a double room. It's a room with a living area, bathroom, and 2 separate bedrooms. The wife was in a bad shape when they came to us. She was close to passing. The husband was fine. He is still alive to this day. She was in one bedroom and the husband slept in the other room. She passed about a week or 2 after coming to our facility. I was the one that actually found her after she passed. I never got to interact with her, but she seemed real sweet, like her husband. All the stuff that was in her room when she passed is still in there. The layout of the room has changed. A sofa is in the place where her hospital bed used to be. The bookshelf got moved a little bit. No major remodeling, but it doesn't look like her room when she was here. Whenever I'm in that room, there's a weird vibe. It's nothing scary, but just feels so different from any other room. It feels like there should still be a person in that room, like it feels inhabited. It doesn't feel like an empty room. I wonder if I feel this way because she was in that room and I saw her and I cared for her as she was passing. Or is it because her stuff is still in that room and they are giving off her vibe that they absorbed from her? I don't know, it's just weird. It feels different in there. I don't like going into that room. The rest of the apartment is fine though. Anyone have any insights about this? I felt this in other rooms that have people passing them before their stuff got taken away. It never feels weird if they just move away though.
I, 21 male with my friend, 21 female. We're out shopping for stuff. She needed a mirror for her room, and it was nighttime, around 9 p.m. Shops usually start closing around that time in my area. We bought a mirror, and we're on our way back, but decided to stop at Domino's for some pizza, as we were actually very hungry at this point. The Domino's was located at a narrow alley, which was very sus according to me and my friend. On our way to the Domino's, we had a small encounter with a man, who had gotten angry at me for not moving aside the road so he can go with his scooter. The alley was very narrow but wide enough for a scooter to go around a person, even if they were close to the center of the road. He had honked at me, but I wasn't paying attention. Then he yelled at me, and I was already far ahead when I turned towards him. By the time I heard him, he was easily able to go around in his way, but he stayed there and just yelled at me. When I turned to him, he asked if I was deaf. I didn't like the tone, so I replied saying that he could have went around me, if he wanted to. And there's so much space for him to go around, too. He started yelling in his local language, which I couldn't understand. He went ahead and stopped at some point ahead of me, turned at me, and waited for me to get near him so he could tell me once again. My friend was walking ahead of me, so she didn't understand what had happened. When I reached near him, I asked him if he didn't want to go now, as he was waiting for me. He asked me where I was from and am I with my girlfriend, and asking if she was my girlfriend, pointing at my friend. I said that I didn't need to tell him shit, and asked him to be on his way. By that time, a car had approached behind him and started honking at him, as he was blocking its way, and then he went on his way. Me and my friend went inside Domino's, and she asked what was all that about, and I told her the whole thing. As we're waiting for our food to arrive, suddenly, I had this very bad feeling inside of me, and I couldn't understand why. It felt like something bad was about to happen. And after a while, my friend turned to me and told me she wasn't feeling good either. I told her I felt the same, and it really felt like something bad was around us. We didn't know why it was happening. We had our food, and it was raining too. I held my bike keys in my palm, as if I were ready to punch someone, or if someone had jumped at us. I was walking alongside my friend towards the park, where I had parked my bike. We were soaking in the rain, and were only thinking about getting home as soon as possible. We never knew we had such a strong bad feeling around that place, but it really did feel like something bad was lurking around that place. The fact that I felt that feeling and didn't let my friend know, and then she herself tell me that she feels the same, it really does send chills down my body.
Through the early 2000s, I guess I worked a lot, usually 7 days a week, sometimes 12 hours and above. I think my longest run was 7 weeks, working 7 days without a real rest. It's that particular run that I'm writing about. So for anyone that's read my previous post about the cat lady, I mentioned some sightings that happened in the place I work. Here's my own. I was coming to the end of the particularly long stint of working overtime I've been doing for 7 weeks. It was Sunday. It was getting late. I was doing shutdown and locking up, making sure everything was safe before leaving. This usually meant I was the last man standing and the last man out. I went through my usual routine, which was kind of a circuit. First sign of things being off was a movement I caught on the edge of my peripheral vision. I turned to see what had caught my attention. Nothing there. My first reaction was something was amiss. So I did what any 23-year-old guy does and picked up something large and heavy up. I shouted a couple times, 30, maybe 40 yards away. Tall black jacket, bald head, just stood there. Only problem was he had no face, no nose, no eyes, no mouth. Now I'm super tired at this rate, so even though I'm blind panicking, I screwed my eyes shut, rubbed them hard, shook my head, 'cause that isn't possible, right? But he's still there. So I turned and walked the other way. I didn't run, but I was walking quick, enough to maybe break into a run if I needed to. I got down the stairs pretty quickly, grabbed my coat and bag, set the alarm, and out I went, locked the door, and went home. Now I know what you think. He was tired, worked too many hours, and was seeing stuff. I didn't feel threatened by it, just to be clear, but it wasn't friendly, and it definitely didn't want me around. Now, fast forward 3 months, old colleague of mine walking down the stairs from the canteen one early morning. There was just me and him. We were usually first in. He's white as a sheet, stuttering. I looked at him and just said, "Black coat, bald head, quite tall?" He nods and we go outside for our coffees, and I calm him down. There were a few sightings of whatever it was after that, mainly when people were on their own. Mainly getting a feeling of unease. I'm glad I'm not there anymore, as it wasn't the last time I saw him either. When I was a child, I have spent several years in and out of hospital with childhood cancer. I'm in my 30s now. I've been in remission for over 20 years, but I don't really remember a lot from that time. Occasionally, memories will reappear that I can't make sense of. This one had been particularly unsettling that I keep revisiting. I want to say I was 8 years old when it happened. My parents alternated staying with me, but my mom had to leave for a couple hours, so I was on my own, wandering the pediatric ward with an IV on a large pole. I don't remember how, but I ran into a boy my age in the neighboring wing, and we talked about video games. We looked around for a TV on wheels with the SNS and eventually rolled it into his room. I remember asking questions like how long he has been there and what he was in there for, but he always gave me really short or vague answers. Asked where his parents were and said they were back at work already. However, when we got to his room, there were no personal possessions, and the bed was made like it was freshly reset. I wasn't thinking of anything much at first, but I plugged in the TV and the SNS and started to feel uneasy. He sat on the bed and told me I can play first, while I sat in a chair near the TV and kept the door open. We both had IVs. I thought mine was fully charged, but then it started beeping that it needed to be plugged in. Since the cart didn't have a power strip, I looked around for an outlet. I asked him if he needed an outlet for his, and he responded, "I don't need one anymore." I suddenly got really uncomfortable and decided to leave, and he just looked kind of unfazed as I left the room. I had thought I knew all the children in the ward and the neighboring ward, but I never saw him before or again. I asked my parents and the staff, but nobody seemed to know what I was talking about. He had brown hair, was slightly chubby, but he didn't look pale or sick like the other kids. I don't know if he was just a strange kid, but the fact that nobody else saw or knew him kind of stayed with me. I remember hearing crying from the ward at night after the children had checked out. I wonder how much of that was my imagination or if there was something paranormal about the hospital. Please let me know if anyone has any stories about paranormal pediatric units or has any questions. Thank you.
This story takes place in the early 2000s during the beginning of my second grade, going into my third grade year of school. We had just moved to a small town in California, and I was having a hard time transitioning and making friends at this new school. The local kids essentially segregated me from the student body, and quite frankly, I was fine with it at this point. A couple weeks had passed, and I was tired of playing alone, so I walked over to this kid who I'd noticed playing in the sandbox/swing set. I genuinely expected him to brush me off, but to my surprise, he was extremely friendly. He had this strange obsession with playing with these green-looking bees that would tunnel in the sand. At first I was afraid, but he assured me that they were friendly, and that we could essentially make little tunnels and mazes in the sand so that they could have adventures. Months had passed, and people started giving me weird looks. I paid no mind at all. All I could think about was going to recess to play with my new friend. Recess came, and I finally decided to ask him for his name. He looked around in a hushed tone and whispered to me, "My name's Gabriel, but please don't tell anyone that we hang out." This completely caught me off guard in a way that hurt my feelings. After that day, I didn't see him again for a while. My second grade year came to an end, and third grade began. Once again, I found myself having a hard time with this new group of kids. It got to the point where I was done trying to make friends. Recess couldn't come fast enough. I walked out of the class and boom, I see Gabriel in the sandbox. So I ran up to him. He didn't look surprised at all and just waved over. We started playing again, and weeks go by and we're in the middle of playing with the bees as usual, when we noticed an office aide making their way towards us. Gabriel looked panicked and told me, "Act like I don't exist," once again catching me off guard. I get brought to the office for a meeting involving my principal, my mother, and both my second and third grade teacher. I was concerned until my mother asked me, "Who are you talking to during recess?" The question confused me, but I answered anyway. I told her I was playing with my friend Gabriel. She had a concerned look on her face and looked back at the principal, who looked pale for some strange reason. My principal asked me the same question, to which I replied with the same answer. Now both teachers and principals looked worried. They asked me not to go back to the sandbox anymore, and that I couldn't play with Gabriel anymore. This struck me to my core. This is my only friend in the last year and a half, and now I can't even play with him? Why? Well, I listened, and a few years later, I actually decided to ask my mom about that conference we had, and she was shocked that I even remembered. She explained everything. Apparently, almost 10 years prior, a little boy named Gabriel had passed away after getting stung by a bee in the sandbox. He was actually severely allergic to bees. The teachers knew I had a hard time making friends, so I guess they'd watch me during recess and notice I'd be talking to myself during recess. It got to the point where they were concerned enough to finally figure out what I was doing. Long story short, I was playing with a kid who had passed away. This bothered the principal so much they renovated the sandbox, and I never saw him again. Normally I'd be spooked by something of this nature, but in this case, I only find myself grateful to him for the memories. Shout out to my spooky friend Gabriel for reaching his hand out when I felt so alone. Rest in peace, Gabriel.
I've been to the Myrtles plantation 3 times, and I have spent the night twice. I have had a few things happen, and I was wondering if anyone else ever spent the night and experienced anything. The first time I had slept at the Myrtles plantation, we experienced things before it was even nighttime. I had went with my fiancé, and we chose one of the cheaper rooms on the right side of the house. I can't remember the name of the room, but after going up the stairs, you took a right and went to the last room on the left. I believe they said a soldier had stayed in there, and he had lost a leg or foot. Anyways, as we got in front of the door, we were overcome with the smell of cigar smoke. It was pungent and overwhelming, almost as if someone was standing right next to us smoking one. I asked my fiancé if he smelled it, and he said yes. It disappeared as quickly as it came, but I brushed it off thinking maybe someone had snuck a cigar hit in from a different room, and we were possibly just catching a whiff of it. While we were walking into the room, I asked my fiancé if he knew of the superstition about the upside-down keyholes. The upside-down keyholes there, and was explaining that it was supposed to prevent spirits from entering the building. As soon as I finished my sentence, my fiancé turned on the antique lamp in the room and the bulb exploded. It startled us, but I chalked it up to the lamp just being old. We went to the gift shop, and I told the lady working that we needed a bulb replaced on the lamp, and so she sent a maintenance guy to replace the bulb. We followed him into the room and replaced the bulb, but it wouldn't turn on. So he said he had replaced the lamp. We stayed in the room when he left so that we could unpack our drinks and snacks from our bags and get ready to explore the grounds. While unpacking, it sounded and felt like someone was hitting a cane against the floor. I could feel the vibration from where I was standing and told my fiancé that something wasn't right. He said that maybe it was just someone downstairs in the room below us banging a broom on the ceiling, trying to tell us we were walking too loud. The problem with that theory was that there wasn't a guest bedroom below us. In fact, it was a dining room, and there wasn't any tours going on. Nor were any guests allowed in that section of the house because it was locked up and off limits until tours. To me, it sounded like someone hanging a cane on the floor to get someone's attention from below. We went outside into the guest shop and asked if anyone was in the main part of the house, and I told her what happened. She told us that the room in the main entrance of the house was reserved, but the guest hadn't checked in yet, and there wasn't anyone in that part of the house, nor could get into the dining area because things were locked up. We thanked her, and I didn't make a big deal of it, and went exploring. Fast forward to that night, we were both sound asleep until I woke up with the feeling of someone watching me. We had left the new lamp on so we could see if we woke up and had to go use the bathroom. Well, I woke up and I could feel someone watching me. I turned towards my fiancé thinking that he was awake and not able to sleep. His eyes were closed, and he was in a deep sleep. I sat up and scanned the room until I found the source of what was causing me feeling of being watched. Standing at the end of the bed about 2 feet from it, I seen a man standing there with smoke swirling in front of his face like he had just taken a drag of a cigar. I had only seen the upper part of his body, and he was just staring at me. After about 10 seconds of staring back at him, I said, "Nope," and promptly laid my head on the pillow and pulled the blanket over my head and forced myself to go back to sleep. The next morning, I told my fiancé what happened, and he asked why I didn't wake him up. I told him that I wasn't able to do anything else but go back to sleep. He didn't want us both to be awake staring at this ghostly man. We left later that afternoon to head home. A year later, we returned to spend the night there, this time choosing a different room. This room was across the hall from the first room we rented, and the only downside was that this connected to the room in front of the stairs. There was a door inside the room that, if unlocked, you could walk into their room. We didn't have any experiences this time throughout the day, nor did I wake up that night. Well, we ended up calling it a night around 9 and settled down for bed. There was a small luggage rack in the room, so I had placed it beside the bed and put our phones, my glasses, his wallet, and my charger on it. We went to sleep and woke up the next morning. I reached for my glasses and my phone and didn't feel anything on the luggage rack. Sat up thinking everything must have fallen on the ground from me maybe bumping it in my sleep. I looked on the ground beside the luggage rack and couldn't find anything. So I woke him up thinking we were robbed. I got up and walked to the bedroom door that separated the rooms. The lock was still in place. Confused, turned around and noticed that everything that was on the luggage rack was now scattered in the middle of the room. It was impossible for it to have gotten there unless someone picked everything up and threw it across the room. Everything was intact and nothing was broken, so we decided just to pick it up and go downstairs for breakfast. Eating breakfast, we happened to be sitting across from the couple who spent the night in the adjoining room from ours. They asked if we had woken up that night and if everything was all right. We told them we slept throughout the night and only woke up recently. They told us that they heard a bunch of commotion coming from our room and, wanting to knock to see if we were okay, chose not to. They said they never heard us and figured we were asleep until they woke up to the sounds of banging and things being thrown. I told them about how our things weren't on the luggage rack whenever I woke up and couldn't figure out why until I noticed everything scattered across the middle of the floor across the room. They said it was so loud and didn't understand how we weren't woken up from it. We didn't understand either. The floors are old wooden floors, so the noise would have definitely woken us up. So once again, we left with a story to tell. So, I was curious if anyone else have ever experienced anything there, especially in the rooms that we spent the night in. Please share your experiences.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross